Hello and welcome back into another edition of Jacket Sports Weekly. I'm Burnt, he's Tan. No wait, that's Caleb Yager. I'm Riley Holsinger here with another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. And Caleb, the softball team had a very impressive week and has had a very impressive season so far. The Waynesburg softball team 11-4 so far this season. 5-1 this past week, the lone loss coming against Pitt Greensburg on this past Saturday, but it's a great season so far for this Waynesburg softball team, and it definitely should be in the running for at least one of those teams vying for the PAC title towards the end of the year.
Oh, absolutely no doubt about it, Riley Holsinger. 2 1-0 wins against Allegheny College to start off the week last week on Tuesday, and 4-1 and 15-4 wins against Penn State DuBois. That 15-4 win came in 5 innings. And then that 15-4 win, the team combined for 14 hits and having 8 runs in the third inning. Just impressive overall. 2-0 win and 8-1 loss against Pitt Greensburg on Saturday. They split the games, but just most impressive, Sydney Wilson. 1 earned run so far this season, and that came against Penn State DuBois in that 4-1 victory. But one of the coolest things that happened this past Saturday was after the doubleheader, Pitt Greensburg and Waynesburg came together. They took a team picture, and they were both sporting blue and teal for suicide prevention awareness. And it's really cool that teams can come together, even though you just competed for 14 innings, just to come together and support a bigger cause than sports.
No, definitely, and you kind of just alluded to it right there. Some things are just bigger than sports, Caleb. That's definitely one of those things that is bigger than sports, and it's a true statement as well. Just a classy honor from both those teams, but you touched on it. Sydney Wilson dominated, as always. That's pretty much the theme of the baseball team. Sydney Wilson this, Sydney Wilson that. She has just been lighting it up so far this season for the Yellow Jackets. Ella Brookman doing a great job as the number 2 pitcher on this roster for the Yellow Jackets. Bryn Hunter has been coming on strong as of late for the Yellow Jackets, which is definitely a great thing. And Waynesburg was able to do it a lot of different ways this week. They had a blowout win, and then they also had a lot of narrow wins too. A couple 1-run victories, 1-2-0 win, and then a 3-0 win. So Waynesburg able to do it, whether if it's blowing them out or in kind of a pitcher's duel and small ball in a low-scoring game. But moving over to the baseball team, not a bad week from the Waynesburg baseball team. 2-2 this past week, 4-8 so far this season, Caleb.
And with softball winning 2 games in a row against Allegheny College, the Waynesburg baseball team dropped 2 games in a row to Allegheny College. But before that, they had a nice 4-2 win against Penn State Behrend. Joe Sabalek came in and got the save. Corey Fisher had an impressive day as well. 7 innings pitched, allowed 5 hits and 2 earned runs, and the team combined for 10 hits. A great win for the Yellow Jackets. But the 2 games kind of forgettable. At least they want to forget it. 10-1 and 8-2. But most impressive from Allegheny side, Tyson Bryant Dawson. 3 hits, 2 RBIs, and not just the first game, but also in the second game as well, hitting .600, and you can see why. But on Sunday, they got the big win against LaRoche College, 12-4. Originally a doubleheader, but the weather said otherwise, so they just played 1 game. But 12-4 win, they really needed that one, right?
No, a very impressive win, and especially against a team that Waynesburg's really struggled against lately, but a huge win for the Yellow Jackets to snap a little losing streak that they've been having. And you touched on it. The theme has been pitching so far for Waynesburg and all those wins. On Wednesday, Corey Fisher had an incredible showing for the home opener. And then on Sunday, you look at it, Joe Sabalak did a great job on the hill right there. And it's going to be rare to see Joe Sabalak start a lot of games this year because it's all going to really depend on the timing. He's student teaching right now, so his schedule's kind of really eaten up until he's able to get out of the classroom and get to the ballpark. Like that game on Wednesday, he ended up showing up late to that game on Wednesday, but he ultimately was able to come out of the bullpen to finish off the game and finish off Penn State Behrend on Wednesday. So definitely those two of Fisher and Sabalak have been very impressive so far this year. Good mix of young and veteran talent on this team. They just definitely need to work on some things throughout the year and definitely develop a little bit. But this baseball team definitely has a lot of potential, Caleb.
Oh, absolutely. And what you said about pitching, even though it might be lacking, what does that mean? You have to adjust on the hitting side of things. Now, the team combined for 14 hits, and they had 7 walks against LaRoche University. So even if your pitching is not doing well, you're going to have to adjust, and you're going to have to get the bats going a little bit this season as well.
Yeah, and then moving over to the track and field, the first outdoor meet of the season happened this past Saturday at the Stan Romanowski Open at West Virginia University. A lot of very talented teams in attendance, a lot of Division I teams, Division II teams. Speaking of some of those Division I teams, you had Akron, you had Pitt, and WVU. So some big talent at the meet, Caleb, but the Yellow Jackets ultimately still had a very impressive Saturday at the meet.
And some of those impressive athletes were Michaela Rose, who placed third in the 100-meter dash, fourth in the 200-meter dash. Rebecca Dolce, fifth in discus throw, first time throwing in 2 years since her freshman year. Andrew Casper also putting on an impressive show, fifth in the 5,000-meter run, and Kai Herbert, third in the 110-meter hurdles. And the interesting thing is, how do you get better? It's by playing against and competing against better competition. So definitely beneficial in many ways for the Yellow Jacket the outdoor track and field teams for both men and women.
No, it's definitely very beneficial for the track team. We'll have Meg Berry join the show later to give us a little bit of analysis of the track and field teams. And a lot of those athletes that were really dominating in the indoor season are out here dominating in the outdoor season. Michaela Rose has just been very impressive so far this season. When you watch her in person, your jaw drops. She's one of those runners that just really stands out when you watch her. And then touching on some other Waynesburg sports that's happening this week. Golf team, first match of the season against Carlow on Saturday. And then the lacrosse team, so far 0-2 on the year, but faces off at Muskingum on Wednesday and then plays against Chatham on Saturday. That'll do it for our first segment here on Jacket Sports Weekly. And when we come back, Logan Lepiscopo will break down the baseball season.
It's a Saturday night. You know what that means. Time to party. Sam is having a good time, watching sports, drinking beer, playing pong. Not a care in the world for Sam. Nobody at the party stops Sam. They let him walk out the door with his keys, even though he was stumbling, having a hard time to stand up. What happened less than 10 minutes later would change Sam's life forever.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly on WCTV. Baseball is next up on the schedule, and here to talk about baseball today is our analyst, Logan Lepiscopo. Thank you very much for joining us today on Jacket Sports Weekly. And now the first question is, there's been a lot of games this past week for the Yellow Jacket baseball team. Out of all of them, which one stuck out most to you?
As far as sticking out to me would be the second game against Allegheny College. The doubleheader itself did not go Waynesburg's way, losing 1-10 and then 2-8. But the reason the second game sticks out to me specifically is that team batting percentage. As a whole team, they batted 2 for 26, which is not even .1 batting percentage as a team. So batting's kind of been a struggle for the team all season long so far, and I'm hoping they can turn around now with conference play coming up.
Yeah, the team's been struggling at least a little bit, to say the least, so far this season. Just 4-8 on the year overall. 2-2 this past week, though. Not too bad for this Waynesburg baseball team. Now, you talked about the game that stuck out most to you from this past week, but what's kind of the whole generalization on what stuck out to you most from the past week in general?
Two things stick out to me specifically. The pitching, number one, by Corey Fisher and Joe Sablak. They've both been tremendous so far on the mound. And the second thing, which is kind of another negative thing about this team, which is unfortunate to say, but runners left on base. If you look at the Penn State Barron game, 10 runners left on base. In the Allegheny game, 6 runners and 5 runners. And then this past game against LaRoche, 8 runners left on base. Obviously, LaRoche, you won 12-4 still, which is great, but you still left 8 men stranded on base, and that could come to bite you in some games.
And we talked about the youth of this baseball team, and two guys that are really part of that youth are the freshman duo from Shaler High School, Aiden Williams and Alec Engelmore, and they've had up and down seasons in terms of both hitting and pitching, and they can do both. But so how important is their role going to be, especially conference play is the rest of the schedule?
It's going to be very important. Like I mentioned, Joe Sablak, Corey Fisher, they can't be the only two guys on the mound all the time. These two young freshmen are going to need to step things up. Yeah, they've had their moments here and there. They've shown their true potential hitting and pitching, but in order to be good in PAC play and to be good further down the stretch of the season, the two are going to need to come together and, like you said, former teammates, they're going to need to go ahead and just, I guess, work on their chemistry maybe a little bit more with the team, or try and figure out a way they can both improve themselves as far as being a team player.
Yeah, and you just touched on those two as players that need to improve, and you also hindered on it as well about the pitching staff just mostly relying on Corey Fisher and Joe Sabalak, two seniors on this baseball team. Don't have too much time left here at Waynesburg University. So who are going to have to be some of those other guys that will have to step up on the hill for the Jackets? Could be Williams, could be Inglemore, or it also could be some other guys like Ryan Sullivan.
Yeah, I was going to say Ryan Sullivan's definitely a name to mention as well. Mike Bell could be another guy we see up on the mound helping out the Yellow Jackets, but baseball is not like softball, especially here at Waynesburg. You don't have a Sidney Wilson that can pitch every single game or every other game. There's going to be games where Joe Sabalak, Corey Fisher maybe are having an off day, or maybe there's a day that they need rest because they just pitched the other day. So it's very important to get a very steady rotation of pitchers in and out in order for Waynesburg to be successful. Like I mentioned earlier, conference play coming up. 4-8 record outside of the President's Athletic Conference. These games are where it really matters. So the pitching rotation is going to need to improve.
Now, of all the opponents that they played, you mentioned they're 4-8 on the season. Those 4 wins have come across that they've gotten have been against pretty quality teams. They haven't played really any really bad teams so far this season. And out of those 4 wins, even maybe in some of the losses, what are some of the positives that you've gotten from this team overall?
I would say, I hate to be repetitive with it, but the pitching from Corey Fisher and Joe Sabalak, they've been a huge part of the team. Yeah, 4-8, obviously not where you want to be record-wise, but those two have been key in Waynesburg winning games. Hitting needs to improve, but fielding has also been fairly decent for Waynesburg. So I think once they get the bats going and get this pitching rotation steady with other than Fisher and Sabalak, that Waynesburg could be doing well in conference play.
And speaking of doing well, we're going to talk about the red-hot softball team coming up here on Jacket Sports Weekly when we come back.
Waynesburg softball team coming off of a very impressive 5-1 week. Also been a very impressive team this whole season long, just going 11-4 so far this year. Here to break down the softball team on Jacket Sports Weekly, good friend Jeremiah Miller. And Jeremiah, 5-1 this past week, lone loss this past game on Saturday against Pitt Greensburg. Pretty impressive so far, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming, especially the PAC. When you look at those preseason polls that came out, the team, their next game is this Saturday at Mount Aloysius. If they win one of those 2 games, they tie last season's total win record of 12. So you got to like what you're seeing thus far from Coach Shimmick and the rest of the softball team.
And we obviously have to talk about Sidney Wilson and just how impressive she has been, only allowing 1 earned run this season. Just talk about that.
Yeah, that's incredible. That equals out to a 0.18 ERA, which just is unheard of, which a lot of times in softball, that's all you need if you can have one heck of a pitcher, because you can throw her out there every game. You can have her pitch 2 games of a doubleheader. Haven't seen her do too much. She did come out in a relief effort in the last game against Pitt Greensburg in the second one, which they lost 8-1, the only loss on the week. But yeah, dominant from the freshman from Clay Battelle, West Virginia, really showing her dominance early in the PAC.
Well, Sidney Wilson's been the hype on the hill so far this season for the Yellow Jackets, but also another girl pitcher on this team that definitely has to be noted. Ella Brookman, she's having an impressive season herself.
Yeah, Ella Brookman is too. She's one of the big returners on this team coming back. Now, her ERA doesn't show how good of a season she's having. Her ERA right now is over 8 right now. She had a bad inning on Saturday against Pitt Greenberg, allowing 5 earned runs in one of those innings. So that hurt the ERA, but she started in every game that they played this year. She's their leader in RBIs, runs batted in, and she's the leader in runs scored as well. So she's been a huge part, not only on the pitching mound, but also in the batter's box for this Yellow Jacket team.
Now, a pattern that we've noticed with this softball team is sometimes they can either get up really early or get up really late, and sometimes it's low-scoring games. And, if you have Sydney Wilson in there, sometimes you'll win games 1-0 or 2-0 like we've seen these past couple of weeks. What are some of the keys for this Yellow Jacket softball team to have that consistency throughout the season? As we mentioned, last year they dropped 15 of the last 16 games. What are some of the things, especially going to conference play?
Yeah, the biggest thing is they are good at getting an early start. They're actually outscoring their opponents 23-1 in the first inning alone, which is just out of this world. But they are, in the games they've lost, they have given up those leads. So, like you said, consistency is a big thing in all sports. It comes over to softball as well. They just got to be consistent. They get runs for Sydney Wilson, and really, when you have a pitcher like Sydney Wilson, all you need is about 2 runs to really keep her settled in on the mound. But yeah, they just got to be consistent all the way out through. It's not a problem about starting well. It's more as finishing.
Yeah, PAC play coming up very soon for the Yellow Jackets. What are going to be some of the major keys for Waynesburg to have a successful PAC season? Hopefully bring home a President's Athletic Conference title, because right now they have to be a little bit in the running as one of those teams to definitely watch out for.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at their schedule, they don't have a PAC game until April 3rd. That's on a Sunday doubleheader against Teal at home. Now that is coming up. They do have a couple more away games against Penn State Fayette, Mount Aloysius. So hopefully they can keep the wheels rolling on those games and heading into conference play. And yeah, Riley, like you said, I don't see why this softball team couldn't be one of the favorites come in the PAC play here at the start of April.
Now, this is going to be a little bit of a different question. So on Saturday, after the Pitt Greensburg doubleheader, they all came together and they got a picture of suicide prevention awareness, and they all wore blue and teal to support that. How cool is that these two teams could come together for a bigger cause?
Yeah, that's awesome, especially these are two programs that don't play each other a lot. In Pitt Greensburg, they're out of the PAC. So a really cool moment there, and something that means a lot to a lot of people. So a really cool moment, cool touching moment that both teams were able to come together and do something special like that. Really good to see that from both teams.
And a lot of great things have been happening so far for this Waynesburg softball team. What are some of those great things that this team's going to have to build off of from beginning of the season to the latter stages of the year?
Yeah, they're going to have to get some more contributors. Right now it's I don't want to say a one-man show. It is a little bit of Brookman and Wilson. They've been the big two. They got to get others to step up. Lauren Lober's been a good one. She's averaging 478 right now and 23 at-bats. She's got to get a little better in the field. That's going to be a big thing. Look for Lauren Lober to have a big second half here as we look into PAC play.
We'll definitely look out for that, Jeremiah, and thank you so much for your analysis on the Waynesburg softball team. And when we come back, Meg Berry will talk about the Waynesburg track and field team.
Have you ever been to the Everly Library? If not, you should, because it's great. They have books of all different genres: history, biography, fiction. Try The Evolution of Life, Life of Pi, or Jurassic Park. So what if books aren't your thing? Try movies like Frozen, or TV shows like Lost. Books and DVDs aren't the only thing though. Take a trip to the second floor. Welcome to the Writing Center. These tutors will tell you everything you need to know about writing a paper, and they'll help revise your essays. Now let's head back down. Behold, the Knox Learning Center. Need to print something out 5 minutes before your next class because you procrastinated? No problem. You can also print off pictures of dogs. Because, well, you can. So grab your homework, laptop, and textbook, and study diligently. Bring your lunch too. Actually, you can't. That's illegal. Now you know the Everly Library. Stop by anytime. Seriously, it's open all week.
Now we're moving over to outdoor track and field here on Jacket Sports Weekly, and here to join us for the NU segment is Meg Berry. Thank you very much for joining us on Jacket Sports Weekly today. And the first thing that we want to talk about is the Stan Romanowski Open, which happened this past Saturday. Just give us a general overview because there was a lot of great competition there.
There was some really good competition. There was only a couple pack schools there, so it wasn't necessarily a really nerve-wracking competition, and we didn't really get to see who we're going to be competing against in the regular season. But being that we had a lot of bigger schools and D1 and D2 schools there, we still came out of the meet very successful. This past weekend, there was 31 people who placed in different events, and out of those 31 different places, 6 of them were from the freshmen. So the freshman class this year is really doing really well, and out of those freshmen, it was Garrett Hilliard in shot put, Lana Jordan and myself in javelin, Adam Hilbing in long jump and triple jump, Caleb Seeger in the 400-meter dash, and Zach Brott, who helped bring the 4x1 place as well. So for it being the first meet of the season, I think we did much better than we had expected.
Yeah, that's definitely great too when you're able to get your freshman class to contribute right off the bat for your team. And you kind of mentioned it right there, some Division I teams in attendance. You had Akron, West Virginia University, and had Pitt there. So some tough competition that Waynesburg was facing this past Saturday. How did you do kind of adjusting to the competition levels of facing up against some Division I and a lot of Division II athletes as well?
Me personally, I just think of it as like a regular meet and think about what I can do for myself to perform the way that I want to. And I think that's how a lot of our athletes took it, because we still competed very well and still did our best and still came out like relatively on top, being that one of our 4x1 teams got second against these D1 schools. And sure, maybe not all of their athletes were there, but it's still amazing to place that high and do as well as we did against these teams that we would never compete against. So I guess it's just having that confidence and knowing that we are able to do just as well, if not better, than some of these D1 athletes.
Now, in your opinion, who are some of the athletes that have stuck out in your mind the most, like Michaela Rose, who placed third in the 100-meter dash, and other participants like Andrew Casper and Kai Herbert?
So those athletes have always been really good in my mind. They had a really good indoor season, along with also Adam Helbing, who I mentioned earlier. He PR'd this past weekend in both long jump and triple jump. And as a freshman, I just think that's an amazing start to the season. And along with Michaela, Kai, and Andrew, they just started right out of the gate, decided that they were going to do well this weekend, and they performed the way that they needed to. And that just looks extremely promising heading into the season.
Yeah, definitely. And the weather on Saturday wasn't the greatest either. And especially for you being a thrower and everything, I'm sure that definitely has to be a huge factor because the weather was everywhere on Saturday. It went from raining, went from sunny, went from very windy. So how tough are some of those conditions to deal with as a thrower, and especially when it's very windy out, like how it kind of was on Saturday?
Some of them are very hard. I primarily throw javelin, and that is the only event that I did on Saturday. So when I was throwing, I would be in the middle of my approach, and then all of a sudden this big gust of wind would come, and by the time I released my javelin, it would push it either straight down to the ground or extremely far right, and it would fall out of sector. So it gets a little frustrating, but there's just sometimes you just have to accommodate to that and get used to it. But I also know that some of the weather helped some of our athletes, like some of our jumpers who were jumping with the wind. It was like tailwind that almost pushed them farther into the pit. So sometimes you have to use the weather to your advantage, but other times it's kind of hard to.
Now, going from the indoor season to the outdoor season, especially with your first year on the team, what are some of the biggest differences between those, and what adjustments do you have to make between them?
So indoor is much different than outdoor, obviously, for the first reason being weather. When you're in an indoor environment, immediately you're in an area where everything is one consistent temperature. There's no wind, there's no rain, nothing like that. So you don't have to adjust accordingly to the weather. So it's a lot easier in indoor, but then when you go to outdoor and there's some of those events that you don't have in indoor, it's a big of a change. So for Michaela, going from running a 60-meter dash to a 100-meter dash, that's quite a change, but she obviously accommodated to it immediately and was still able to perform the way that she wanted to. But for events that you don't have an indoor like javelin and discus, we still did very well in those 2 events this past weekend, but you have to think that that's just the starting point because it's the first time being able to throw in a competition setting. So sometimes it's hard to have that transition, and it's hard to do well right out of the gate in the first meet.
Yeah, and you mentioned javelin and discus there, 2 events that you do. What got you into doing those events, and also what got you into doing just track and field in general?
I originally was a sprinter when I was in 7th grade. I didn't want to play softball for the middle school. So my brother did track, so I decided to try it out, and I was a hurdler, but I hated running. And a part of the warm-up for middle school track was running a mile. And one day we were warming up, and the coach said, okay, throwers, you don't have to run the mile. You can head down to the pit. And I looked around and I said, okay, I guess I'm a thrower now. So 1 week into outdoor track, my 7th grade year, I became a thrower, and I never stopped since then, and I just really love it. And javelin, I started doing my 9th grade year, and it just became a really big passion of mine.
Through all the stages that you've been in terms of participating in track and field, from younger stages to high school to now the college level, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned through all of your experiences?
To not try and force it, to just let it happen. When you try to force a throw, it never goes the way that you want it to go, and to just relax. I have a very tough time relaxing and just being patient. So it definitely has taught me patience and to just trust myself and relax when I throw.
And the head coach of the track and field team, Chris Hardy, he spent time in college as a thrower for Cal U, I believe. So what's it like being able to learn from a guy who spent his collegiate career throwing?
It's very nice. It's because you can trust him. You understand that he's been in your position before, and he knows what it's like to be a college athlete, especially a thrower. So it's super nice because he has that experience on top of just teaching you and trying to become a better athlete as he did once before. So he's just trying to make it easier for us as well.
Now you guys have the rest of the outdoor track and field season to complete. What are some of the goals, maybe individually or as a team, that you guys have in mind?
Individually, I would like to make it to nationals and become an All-American this year. And team-wise, I know the female team is trying to win PACs, and obviously that is the goal for the male team as well. But they did finish relatively bad in PACs last year, so their goal is to just do better and to place like in the top 3, I believe they said is their main goal. So just to come together as a team and to really get points where we need to get points, and when it comes down to that crunch time, perform and do what we need to do to win as a team.
And looking forward to your entire collegiate career here, because you still have a long way to go in your time at Waynesburg University. What do you hope to achieve most here at Waynesburg? It could be something athletically, or it could be something else.
Athletically speaking, I would love to be a 4-time All-American. That's definitely a really big goal of mine. But if not, just to beat the school record here would be great, or to even be an All-American just once. That's just a great thing to have. And to also help lead my team to the PAC championship, because I understand that it's the little things. Even if you get 9th place at PACs, that's still 1 point, and that 1 point might really help you. For me, I'm not a huge fan of throwing discus, but if I throw discus at PACs and get 1 point, that's 1 point more that the team might end up needing and could help them come to a victory.
Once again, Meg Berry, track and field athlete, thank you very much for joining us on Jacket Sports Weekly. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for in today's show. Tune in every Monday for more Jacket Sports Weekly right here on WCTV.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.